Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the October meeting of the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority. I would like to call the meeting to order, and we can begin with roll call. Mrs. Rodriguez.
Gladly. Good afternoon, board members, starting with President Millibar,
Here.
Director Martin,
Present.
Director Luna,
Present.
Director Estamera,
This is Director Keegan. I am participating in his absence.
thank you, Alternate Director Keegan. Director Chang,
Present.
Director Anatawi,
Present.
and Director Weed. Thank you. We have a quorum and everyone's accounted for.
Move on to item 3. This is a closed session to discuss the potential litigation item on the agenda. Mrs. Rodriguez, any public comments on this item?
President Millibar, we have not received any public comment requests for this item.
Go into closed session, anticipate being back at approximately 2 p.m. Well, we'll open the meeting back up. Josh, any report out of closed session?
Thanks, President Millibar. There's no reportable action in a closed session.
All right. We'll go on to item 4, open the meeting, pledge of allegiance. Okay, we'll make a statement here about public comment. We are now on item 5, public comment on items not on the agenda. If you wish to make a public comment, we request that you submit a request through the QR code noted on the agenda. In addition, attendees may provide public comment during the meeting by submitting a comment card or using your hand function on the Zoom platform. Those participating by phone can press *9 to raise their hand. Ms. Rodriguez, have we received any public comment for item 9?
President Millibar, we have not received any requests at this time.
Okay, thank you. Move on to approval of minutes. Item 6. Our first action item is approval of minutes for the August 15th, 2024 meeting. Ms. Rodriguez, any public comment on this?
President Millibar, we have not received any requests for this item.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. We have a second.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Sorry, I missed who did the motion first? Director Reed, thank you. All right, President Millibar,
Approved, yes.
Director Barton,
Yes.
Director Luna,
Aye.
Director Keegan,
Here. Yes.
Director Chang,
Aye.
Director Anatawi,
Yes.
and Director Weed. All right, thank you. Meeting minutes approved.
Okay, move on to item 7A, discussion. Our next item is on the monthly report. Graham Bradner, please.
Thank you, President Millibar. Claudia is pulling up the monthly report. So if we could go to section 1, summary of work. Main activities this past month, we've been continuing to work on a number of organizational growth. This is a lot of looking at standard operating procedures and management plans. Again, just looking towards the future and making sure that we've got the systems in place to transition on this program once we complete all the major permitting activities. On the administrative front, we have a couple of key activities going on. One of them is the project to improve the audio in this boardroom. So I look forward to getting that project completed. It should upgrade the microphones throughout the space as well as at the dais. So I think that'll be an important project. In terms of the engineering work that the team is focused on, one thing I'd like to point out, we've been preparing what we're calling the concept engineering report for the Delta Conveyance project. We no longer have multiple alignments and alternatives and flow rates to talk about. We're now talking about the Delta Conveyance project, which was the Bethany Reservoir alignment selected back in December of 2023 by the department at the conclusion of the EIR process. As a result, we've gone through and cleaned up all of the engineering documentation that used to be in multiple volumes and various addenda to align with the environmental documents, and instead have condensed that down to one cohesive engineering document for the preferred and selected project. So that's a document that we have prepared. It's now in the process of getting its ADA compliance editing and formatting done. And we do anticipate having that document posted to our website by the end of this month. And we'll provide a little bit more update on the value of that document, what it provides, likely at our December board meeting. So additionally, I'm sure everyone recalls, we did release the updated total program cost estimate back in May of this year. We do still continue to get around and present the information associated with that estimate. That updated cost. So we're still communicating that out to the public and to various agencies so that they can understand the work associated with that estimate and what it represents, along with the benefit cost analysis that was prepared by the Berkeley Research Group. The fieldwork team, they're not in the field currently, but they're still processing a lot of the data. We're taking advantage of the current time to clean up all of the available information that's been provided, make sure we've got everything into our databases, and that we're sharing and distributing that information amongst the engineering teams. They've got a couple other studies underway, one being some additional work around the reuse of the excavated tunnel material. So this is augmenting some of the earlier studies back in 2013 that took some of the material from the tunnel horizon, added the likely amendments, and then reanalyzed the geotechnical and environmental properties of that soil. So we're doing a bit of augmentation to that work, and that'll just continue to add to the overall data set and understanding. Claudia, let's jump now to well, I'll pause here first, I suppose, and see if there's any questions about work performed before I shift gears into the financial updates.
Any questions of Graham?
Thank you, President Millibar. Graham, we have a lot of items where we're continuing efforts on the various things, and I appreciate one of them. You said anticipate completing at a certain time. Is it possible that you could, in the future, incorporate some and schedule information on when we're going to complete a particular activity, or is this just open-ended on a lot of these efforts that we're doing?
I'd be happy to add anticipated completion times. Like you said, some of them may be just ongoing and they don't have a completion time because they're just kind of go on for the duration of the fiscal year. A lot of those would be sort of in the program management side of things, but we do have many discrete activities also, and you're right that they aren't clearly articulated on this report, which ones are ongoing and which ones have a scheduled completion time. So if it's okay with you, I would probably start referencing the term ongoing to those that are truly ongoing. And then for those that do have a finite period of time, we'll characterize them as such and provide an anticipated completion date. Sure.
Any other questions? Graham? Okay, Ms. Rodriguez, any public comment?
No, we'll keep going. Sorry, President Millibar. I'll keep going to the finance sections. Yeah, we'll just keep going within the report. So now we're going to shift gears to the budget summary, where we are with the current fiscal year. We have our approved budget of $43 million. At this point, we've committed through our task orders and contracts a little over $34 million. We're already showing, normally we wouldn't be showing an underrun this early in the fiscal year, but we have not issued through task orders, the funding associated with the field work, with the investigative work that's currently limited. So until we issue those funds, they're going to show as an underrun on the program. So that's how we're reflecting them. This board will recall that when you approved the budget last fiscal year in June, there was an amount dedicated to investigative programs this past summer and then this fall and next spring. And that's the amount of funding there that you see that's currently indicated as an underrun. Otherwise, things are pretty much on track. There's not much to say. We're pretty early in the fiscal year. And as you know, we'll continue tracking this in increasing detail and likely do our mid-year reconciliation process where we evaluate performance, see what's moving, what isn't, what we would like to do, and maybe shift focus. So through that mid-year reconciliation, we usually reflect a pretty significant update, and then we'll start to provide any additional underruns or overruns, hopefully not, but anything else that we anticipate through the fiscal year. We'll start to daylight mid-year.
Okay.
Claudia, can we jump to now the financials for last fiscal year? So this is that point in time where we still are reporting out the FY 23-24 financials because we haven't fully closed, although we are getting very, very close. I do hope that by the time we get to the next board meeting in December, we're not, at that point, I suppose we might be doing one final recap, but I do expect to be closed out here pretty soon. We had our budget of 40.44 million. Ultimately, we have now an estimate at completion that is 31.38. That's our refined EAC. You can see we're now indicating a underrun of a little over 9 million, and I expect that number to be pretty tight at this point and not likely to significantly change. As we finalize invoices, receive and finalize invoices, we hone and refine this number. We're pretty close to finalizing this. So I think this is a pretty accurate reflection of how we're going to fully close out last fiscal year. Lastly, Claudia, if we could go to the fiscal year, this schedule, which I do admit reflects a lot of ongoing work. So as you look at this, you see a lot of those bars, back to your comment, Director Martin, a lot of these activities are just sort of ongoing activities that we're talking about here. You can see on the investigative work, which is that lower kind of dark colored work stream there with program geotechnical activities underlain by summer, that is completely behind schedule. We have not conducted that work. Fall 2024 also behind schedule at this point. We have not initiated, don't anticipate conducting that work, but we still have the spring 25 program identified as part of the fiscal year scope of work, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Other than that, the bulk of the activities for the fiscal year are on track. No real issues to report.
That completes your report.
It does complete my report.
Okay,
Yes.
any public comments?
President Milbar, we have not received any requests for this item.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7B, an amendment to the DCA travel policy. Do we have a staff report?
Yeah, thanks, President Milbar. So this board previously adopted a travel policy. And the item before you would be one edit to that approved policy. Currently, the policy includes a number of template forms attached to the policy, and they're incorporated by reference. So any changes to those forms requires an amendment to the policy. So what we're proposing would be to allow staff some flexibility to update those template forms outside of a formal amendment to the policy. And we would, of course, make sure that those templates remain consistent with the substance of the policies. So this item really is a cleanup. There's no substantive change to the policy. It would just allow staff to update those template forms. And a red line of the proposed changes is included in your packet as attachment 3. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Josh on this one? I don't see any questions. Any public comment, Mrs. Rodriguez?
No public comment requests.
Okay. Open it. Or is there any more? No, we don't need to have a roll call or anything on this, right? There's no, nothing to approve or motion.
Yeah, no apologies. Staff is requesting a motion to approve the resolution to
Oh,
approve the
okay.
amended policy.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval of the item.
Second. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
President Milbar,
Aye.
Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Luna,
Aye.
Director Keegan, Director Chang,
Aye.
Director Anaptawi,
Yes.
and Director Weed. Excellent. Thank you. Approved.
Okay. Item 7C, findings of the Independent Technical Review Committee. Graham, can you please introduce the ITR presenter?
Thank you, Chair Millibar. Also would like to introduce Daryl Hayes joining us today. Daryl is the engineering manager for the Delta Conveyance Office of the Department of Water Resources. So you know we work very closely with the Delta Conveyance Office. We work very closely with Daryl. Independent technical reviews are a key part of our overall program quality control plan. This independent technical review was conducted through contracts with the Department of Water Resources, thereby creating the independence that we're looking for. None of the folks involved in this review are under contract to the DCAs, and they're not aligned with any of the contractors that we have working on the program. So we also have with us today Dan Adams, who I know Daryl will introduce. He facilitated the technical review panel. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Daryl for introductions and to kick things off.
Thank you, Graham. Yes, I'm Daryl Hayes, as Graham said, and I'm the engineering manager for Department of Water Resources. I've been with this department for probably 20 plus years. However, 4 years on this program in particular, and then I took about 19 years off during that time to work in the consulting industry, as well as the fabrication and construction of a number of fish facilities across the country. So anyway, this is the capacity I'm in now. So we did convene a group. We have this oversight responsibility. And so we took on some of the major project innovations that the DCA has come up with that I think they've shared here with the board. And these were some of the items that we picked were some of the big ticket items that could potentially save the project a lot of money at some point. So they've done some further refinements. We thought before we carry anything into the change in project description on some of these items, we would basically run it through our independent panel. So we selected a panel of about 7 people. And you can see here on the screen, basically these folks are really pillars of the community of this. It worked on tunneling, slurry walls, geotechnical issues. We selected this committee to look at these 8 or 10 issues and big ticket items. So Dan Adams led that effort. He was our moderator. He served on a lot of the tunnel engineering and geotechnical issues. So he kind of led the group. And as you can see here, we had a tremendous amount of experience in the room and a lot of people just to look at this too. So next slide. The goal basically is to come to consensus on whether the DCA's proposed innovation concepts should be advanced to the concept design level. And then we would basically, if they think it's a good idea, we'll basically take it to the next level, do an environmental review, kind of flush them out a little further before we actually adopt them into the project. And do we have enough information at this point to really go forward? And that's kind of was their charge. So they after presentations and review of read-ahead material, they reviewed the innovation concepts to make sure we all understood the technical issues surrounding each of those and had a good understanding. A lot of debate on both the merits and the influence on the project's schedule, the cost, the potential environmental impacts that some of these things might look. So a lot of discussion over two full days, basically independently kind of looking at some of these and then bringing in some of the DCA folks and others who could maybe answer some questions while they reviewed that. And then basically developed suggestions to improve some of those or maybe some things they might want to look at to further improve these as they develop them further. So that was our charge. I'll kind of turn it over to Dan Adams. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us here today, but he will tell you a little bit about the process and go through a couple examples.
Thanks, Daryl. So, yeah, my name's Dan Adams. I've been in the tunnel design construction world for 35 years. And I'm more of a cat herder than an engineer these days. So we got that big group together and did what Daryl just said. The key to our work was the second bullet there, because each of these innovative ideas were presented, and then we, there's a lot of opinions in that room. We debate the merits of each and come out 3 days later with what we think. If you could go to the next slide. So we looked through the 7 or 8 items on there. I say 7 or 8 because Surge Basin had a lot, but the tunnel lining process, you have tremendous amount of tunnel lining on this job. And so an optimization, there's a lot of benefit cost-wise and schedule-wise. Tunnel alignment itself, technology called semi-continuous mining, which is kind of on the emerging end of the tunnel world. Providing for dual access at the launch shafts. The launch shafts are very, very active places. So ideas around that. That's the tunnel stuff we looked at. At the Bethany pump plant and Surge Basin, we got into some details on those. Those are very large structures. So one of the innovations was utilizing interlocking shafts for the dry pits, a tunneled wet well, and alternatives. There was 5 of them actually on the Surge Basin excavation and support, another very, very large structure. I'm going to go through as an example kind of what we looked at, where we got to on 2 of them. And the first one is the pump station configuration. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is the conceptual design of the Bethany Reservoir Pump Station, pump plant and Surge Basin. We in the ITR just called it the station itself. It's huge. It's if I remember, Daryl, it's 600 feet long, 400 or 500 feet wide, and a couple of 150 feet deep. The concept up and through this innovative idea was to go traditional. So this is one very massive open cut excavation. And it's required because the volume of water is big. It's a huge pump station in terms of moving, I think it's 6,000 cubic feet per second of water. So what the innovation was is your design team had looked at this and said, my goodness, this is really big. It's going to take many, many years to do. It's got a huge footprint, and there's a lot of risk with it. So they came up with, if you go to the next slide, this concept called the interlocking overlapping circular shaft dry pit. That's what it was called. But the bottom line is a concept was developed that takes some standard industry stuff, which is a circular shaft, which in the vertical excavation world is easy to build, puts them together, and when you think of it globally, it simplifies the construction, shortens the duration, and allows for clean, easy vertical access to the pumping equipment without any floors between the two. And that's one thing I didn't touch on, but the traditional large pump station has to have floors in it to hold it all together. Go to the next slide. This is what it looks like conceptually. So rather than that big rectangle you saw in the previous slot, you have a bunch of cylinders, so interlocking shafts that are interconnected with if you picture the circles tangentially connecting as they go along, closed together with each one of them holding a pump and a wet well that comes down the middle. So the pump's on the either side and those interlocking shafts, wet well down the middle. So this is what we called the interlocking dry pit concept. Go to the next slide. This is what it looks like in plan. You have it's hard to see, but if you kind of focus on those red circles on the top half of the screen, that first whole red one, and then it has a kind of a tangent line there. Thank you very much. That's just continued across the line for 7 pumps on either side. So that's the dry pit. In other words, that's where the pumps sit. There's no water in there. And the water comes in the middle. And the connection between the water coming in, that inlet channel right there, are connections laterally to each of the pump basins. Next slide. This is what it looks like in a cross section. If you drew a line vertically up and down through the middle of the structure and you looked kind of down the wet well, this is in the middle of 2 of the dry pits with the what we'll get to in a minute, with the wet well that's in the middle, which is in that paceless circle. You can see the access from the top down is open. So it's a single crane that could service all 7 on either side and have unfettered access down into the pit, access the pumps that are in the quote dry pits. Next slide. So we went through this and fleshed it out on a whiteboard and debated what was good and bad about it. And at the end of the day, this whole ITR team unanimously endorsed this concept. We recommend moving forward with it as the way to go. There's 3 reasons really big there, and that is the overall construction schedule is reduced. It's just simpler to build. It eliminates the whole temporary support system that was required in that 600-foot long, 400-foot wide, open box. And it allows the use of a tunneled wet well, which is another innovation idea, which I'll get to in a second. But you combine the 2 together and you got, tremendous savings on the project and just a much smaller footprint overall. The observations we came out with on the challenges of this, the diaphragm walls, that's the construction method. That's what it's called to build those circles. They're at 240, 250 feet, which is how deep they need to be as currently understood. You're kind of at the edge of industry. We don't think that's terrible, but it's just something to be aware of. The geotechnical information needs to be verified. I actually believe that if some verification work was done, that 240, 250 would get smaller. And then the operations guys need to kind of really review this to make sure that we don't need to add, or the team doesn't need to add, a second layer of isolation between the pumps and the wet well. But this one, a typical, 2 or 3 hours bashing this out and coming up with what's wrong with it, and then arguing that there isn't really anything wrong with it. This was a home run for the team. Next slide. So this is interrelated. Again, this is one example. The first one was example 1, and then this one kind of comes out of it. The idea here was that your engineering team had advanced the big box, and then they came up with the 2 dry pit concepts and shafts, and they had a kind of interim, which was like, well, we still got to get the water in there. So what do we do with the slot down the middle of the traditional wet well? And I don't know how long it took, but fairly in that design development process, someone said, hey, we could run a tunnel from the termination shaft of the big tunnel, the main supply tunnel, and run it down the middle of the 2 dry pits. So we called this the mined tunnel wet well inlet. It's compatible 100% with the interlocking dry pit concept. It's another thing that just simplifies construction and shortens the duration. The 2 kind of differences here that make this one also attractive, but in a different way, you're capitalizing in this concept on the rest of the work in your program, because it's the same skill set and same activities required to build the other miles of tunnel. And then the other thing about this is it's just a substantially lower environmental footprint, because you're taking out a fraction of the amount of material to build this wet well than conventionally had thought. Okay, next slide. This, you can jump to this pretty easy. It's kind of straightforward. If you think about it, you had the 2 dry pits on either side, and the red there defines kind of the barrier where you'd mine this tunnel, and the dashed blue line is the tunnel concept. So the reception shaft, that meaning reception shaft, is from the main tunnel from the north. Work platform we dropped in there, and you would mine a tunnel over to the dry pits. And then the little blue dashes there are jacked connections between the dry pits and the wet well. All done, of course, in the dry before any water's in there, but that's the concept. Next slide, please. So here's kind of the combination of the two of them. The upper left-hand side of your screen there has the proposed inlet tunnel coming in there. You see the cylinder going in between the two concentric circles. They're the interlocking shafts mined out. And then the pumps come up to a manifold. You see the manifold piping, which is on the outside of each of the shafts. Same with the traditional. And then the lower right hand is the current configuration. Next slide. So this is where we got to on this one. We recommend moving forward with a mine tunnel wet well concept, and make it part of that interlocking dry pit concept. Our main observation on this is that the key for it to work feasibility wise, is to make sure that the earth where you're going to mine this tunnel is depressurized during the work, and we think that's pretty straightforward. If you have the interlocking work is finished, it's a straightforward exercise to depressurize the ground before you mine it. And the second thing we suggested that the EDM team do is move the reception shaft from the tunnel. In other words, extend the tunnel a little bit, the main tunnel, to get the pump station and the tunnel closer together, which makes this whole mine tunnel wet well interface simpler. Next slide. So that's an example for the board here to understand what we did over the course of 3 days. We did it on a lot of other stuff. So again, we did 8 to 12 innovations we went through, and we kind of came to the following conclusions on each of the high level ones. So we on the dual access at the 2 major tunnel drives, we are encouraging and believe that's money well spent. So we'd encourage the team to advance that. We are very confident the tunnel alignment could be raised 20 feet on reaches 1, 2, and 3. That's upstream of the East Bay Mud right-of-way. We think that if you did a little more work and worked through options with East Bay Mud, that reach 4 could be minimized also by doing some ground improvement, that reach 4 depth, that is. We're 100% behind optimizing the tunnel lining to reflect the external confinement. If you get to the report, you'll see that this is not uncommon, particularly in major infrastructure that's running what we call natural water. You know, it's not anything, it's not oil, it's not gas, anything like that. Next slide. The semi-continuous mining, we debated that quite a bit. It's not really been done anywhere in a production manner. A part of the industry is pushing it. So, but in developing the method and working through what it would mean to delta conveyance, we believe that it could work, but there's no reason to change anything to allow it to work. For the surge basin alternative, we considered the 5 options that were presented. We debated which ones we liked, and liked is who had the strongest opinion about it being feasible or infeasible. And we rounded out and landed on the roller compacted concrete option as preferred. There was a kind of a side tangent that suggested an internally braced alternative where rakers are built as part of the excavation, and it's kind of like an inside-out buttressed structure. That could also work. It was not actually developed and presented. We just spitballed it on a whiteboard, and everyone thought it looked good. So we said, move forward with the RCC and maybe investigate this buttress concept. You just heard my interlocking dry well summary. Great idea. We had this kind of thing where until operations buys it, carry the rectangular box just a bit further until you get through that gate. Next slide. The mine tunnel wet well, great idea. Design effort should focus on the final lining requirements though, and leave how it's built and what the tunneling method is to the contractor, because it's a few years out and the same team that are chasing the tunnels are going to chase this, so they might make it more efficient overall. We got into a contract delivery because it's very hot topic, especially with the, especially in a couple of really big California. So we evaluated that, and based on your scope of work and the scope of complexity and timeline for the project, we thought that the design bid build delivery is probably going to provide the best cost control for the project. However, it takes long to execute in a linear job, and so we thought if where we all agreed pretty universally that if the schedule governs over cost, or if the DCA is willing to pay a little premium for one or two contracts, CMAR is the way to go. And the last bullet we debated and discussed was related to geotechnical information for the level of design completed. Is there adequate amount? And we believe there is. These concepts and in particular, the innovations that we reviewed, we had enough data for those people you saw, there's 40-year guys in that room, to agree and be comfortable with it. But we all agreed that if you added explorations, or if you did more geotech work, it's most likely going to actually reduce the complexity of project, not make it worse. I think that's my last slide, Claudia. Yeah, that's it. So thank you. I understand the board has gotten our report. So if you have any questions, I'm all yours.
I think we should have some questions. Go ahead, Director Chang.
Yes. You look, are we going? Go ahead, Robert. Yeah, thanks, President Middlebar. Don, appreciate the detailed report and the rigor. I think the group went through. It was very, very impressive. I feel like a child compared to you guys in terms of your work experience. So as I'm kind of going through your summary, it looks like you have a total of like 7 or 8 different innovation ideas, and I was trying to track which ones that you're actually recommending to move forward. From your table of contents. So if you could just maybe summarize for me very, in a brief manner, that would be great.
Sure. And I'll do this off of memory, Daryl. So if you could assist if I screw this up a little bit. The tunnel lining innovation, we recommend moving forward. The optimize, I think they call it optimize the vertical alignment and the shaft size. We recommend moving forward with the optimize the vertical alignment. We don't think there's anything needed with the shafts. The semi-continuous mining, we don't think there's anything to do. It's a patented process by one tunnel boring manufacturer, and there's whether it's in the project or not is not going to dramatically change the price, schedule, or the environmental impact. The fourth tunnel option is the what we call dual access at the 2 primary shafts. We believe that's worth doing, or put another way, we recommend that the advance or early work contracts set up for 2 access points at each of the 2 working shafts. So that's, I think, I don't remember which director asked that question, but that's 3 out of the 4 on the tunnel we recommend moving forward with. On Bethany pump station, we recommend moving forward with the interlocking shafts. We recommend moving forward with the mined wet well. We recommend the roller compacted alternative be advanced in the surge basin. And Daryl, what am I missing on Bethany?
I would say, I think he did recommend looking at another alternative.
Oh, yeah.
Configuration there.
we recommended a different alternative, an alternative that no one has, that the innovation team hadn't hit yet. They were going to investigate that, and we called that the internal buttress alternative. And then, so on the 8 innovations, that's where we landed. And then we had 2 extra credit points because we were asked about the, I forget how it came up, but we got into contracting and how to deliver it most efficiently. And we came up with our bid build for the stuff that is not schedule critical, and CMAR for the things that the agency is interested in having done earlier. And we believe the geotechnical exploration program is adequate for the decisions being made. I think that would summarize the report.
Thank you. That was exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Director Martin.
Thank you, Dan, for your presentation. I think that number of experts that gather around to review the project is very valuable to the project. I appreciate the effort that went into it. And I don't mean to oversimplify, but it just seems to me that there's always better ideas, and there's always the advantage of having a group of experts tell us what those better ideas are. But is there anything in the recommendations that doesn't have a technical precedent? I mean, it just seems to me that it's a accumulation of well-known structural technologies and hydraulic technologies that you assemble to produce these better ideas. Am I off base on that?
I don't think you're terribly off base, but you have to, the reason we picked the interlocking dry pits and the mined wet well is because the technology, or what's being proposed, so if you think of interlocking shafts, it's been done. It's kind of the way the industry's going when people want a rectangular, and I'll just stick with the word pump station. When people want a rectangular pump station, agencies, and they pencil out what it costs to build the traditional manner versus how the underground industry is now building them, they're trending toward what we call in our industry figure eights. So it's however, it's being pushed to a level that hasn't been done before, if that makes sense. And so if you say, Dan, where have you done these interlocking shafts before? I'd say, well, we did it in DC, industry did it in Seattle, industry did it in LA, but to make something this big, and you're using them in a more, I would say, sophisticated and or intelligent manner here, because you're going to give your operations guys 7 independent dry wells. And it just happens to benefit the project. So we're taking existing technology, and it's now we just came up with, said it's a good idea. Your engineering team came up with the idea. And the same thing I would say with the wet well, the mined wet well is saying, hey, if we're tunneling this and we got circles, if you think like a structural engineer, you have circles down here. Circles love circles. So drive a tunnel and jack into the 2 circles, and you have load distributed evenly everywhere without digging a big hole. Technology done before, not in this application, but all of the wizards in that room, because I just, again, was the shepherd, they all really liked it.
Thank you very much.
Director, go ahead.
Thank you, President Milbar. And thank you, Dan, Daryl, the whole team. Just really appreciate the work, the just amazing work you guys did. And I think, I mean, I don't know, a reflection of the design team's capabilities and their ingenuity here, and sort of having those innovations confirmed as good ideas to progress forward. So really appreciate the whole team. I have a few questions. I don't know if you want them to take them one at a time, or if I should just lay it out all on you and address it. You tell me how you want it.
You can lay them all out because
All right.
I'll pick the easy ones first and think about the harder ones.
Sounds good. And I'm by no means an expert, so I may ask some silly questions here. But one, you had mentioned cost, schedule, and risk as some of your kind of vectors of analyzing these things under your lens. Things like construction safety, did those make their way in, as well as maybe operational? I know you mentioned having operations weigh in, but in terms of how it benefits the operation of the facility from a cost or complexity standpoint, I guess is one question. A second would be related to the particular innovation on the interlocking shafts. My head just kind of goes right to thinking there's kind of maybe less volume of water during a dynamic condition when you're turning pumps on. You know, do the pumps get starved? I'm just curious in terms of your opinion there, like how that affects that design affects that potential condition. And then the third is related to project delivery. I think you mentioned that there may be an opportunity to deliver, well, for traditional design bid build on most, but there, you know, if there is an interest, certain work packages could be issued via progressive design build or whatever. When do those become also a cost saving? I mean, if we're, let's say, delayed on geotechnical investigation, and we're getting into construction, does it start to make sense to deliver some of those work packages as progressive because it does result maybe in a schedule and cost savings? Or is it, generally speaking, things are looking like cost savings are just traditional bid, design bid build? And I don't know if that question made sense.
Okay, your last question does make sense. Is that the pile of questions?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so the first three were safety, operations, and head and flow in the system. So I'm going to answer those on behalf of the entire ITR. On the contract delivery question, I'm going to save that to last because that's more Dan Adams' opinion, and maybe there was only one or two of us in that room that are in what I would call currently 100% active in that market. So park that till last. So on the first question, safety did come into our play. It's part of it's part of the overlay on we're saying it's lower risk. So let's take, I'm going to leave the key example and let's get to shaft optimization. There's a layer in the report on one of the innovations, which is, what does the ITR think of optimizing the vertical alignment and optimizing the size of shafts? An example of where the safety lays on the risk. We said, well, we wouldn't play with the shaft size. They're set up and have been thought out to be efficient and effective for the final design. And they're large enough as is to accommodate any type of construction operation in the tunnel without impacting or having anything negative on the risk of a safety issue, in particular the shaft. That's where almost all big tunnel incidents occur, is on the vertical work up and down, trying to get in and out of the tunnel. That's an example. So yeah, safety was part of our overlay on risk. On operations, we did talk about how does it affect operations. It was light. We spent, I'd say, maybe 2.5 hours. And Daryl, I can't remember the EDM lead guy who was the Mr. Operations, but he answered all our questions. And we considered it. It's why we're suggesting on the pump station design that you carry two until you pass through the operational consent gate. So your operators are content with the plan. And it laid into the discussion on the two-side access as construction operations. So we looked at operations in both ways. You asked me a hydraulic question about head moving through that wet well, and are the pumps going to get starved? I think the guy's name was Tony, now that I'm thinking about it. Now, we talked about that with Tony. That wet well tunnel, first of all, is not small. I think it's 25-foot diameter, maybe a little bigger. So, and Daryl, you could help on that too. Do you remember the diameter? 40-foot diameter. Yeah, so it's 2 times what I was thinking. So it's a 40-foot diameter wet well tunnel. It's the same size, theoretically, as the actual tunnel, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will add too that hydraulics, although it wasn't we didn't bring in hydraulics experts for this review. However, the DCA did do the hydraulic work prior to bringing this to them. It's definitely something we want to flush out, all of the hydraulics. It's a very complicated system with the pump station at the very end of the system. But as far as starving the pumps, this is always a submerged, it will always be in
Yeah.
a submerged situation.
I-
Go ahead,
I
Dan.
think, yeah, I was gonna think, I think to help answer this question or have it understand, Claudia, if you back up to the isomeric or the 3D graphic of that concept, what helps you visualize, there you go, we just passed it. That wet well looks small because of the skin, no, the 3D, the next one. There. So that pumping plant inlet well on the left side under the proposed configuration, it looks small, but you got to remember the structure that it's going to is 600 feet long. And so if you think in terms of a 40-foot diameter tunnel, that's a 4-story building. That's how much water is going in there. And as Daryl said, at all times. So I think it's the scale that might make one worry a little bit. Okay, I think I tried to, did I answer the first 3 questions? Because I wanted to answer those because those were, I can say on behalf of 7 people, most of whom had gray hair.
That was great. Thank you.
Okay, on the procurement. Now, we explored this and because alt delivery always comes up and cost and schedule and impacts if you have one or the other. What we were trying to get at there is that exactly what you said for the work that is where you're not worth paying extra for schedule, it should go bid build. It'll be the most effective. You'll have control of the work and the evidence is pretty clear. It's the lowest total cost to get the job done. We talked about progressive design build. The 5 people in that room that are on projects as experts that are progressive design build don't believe it's benefit for any project north of $500 million. If you look at the track record in the state of California, and you look at, let's just take BART to San Jose, which is the darling child right now of the underground world in terms of, oh my God, it's not saving money. If you look at California high-speed rail, it's not saving money. And my own personal opinion, I'm going to leave that crew. The reason for that is that the contracting entity is driven by interests that are different than the owner. And I'll leave it at that. What we do believe is working in our industry is CMAR, or construction manager at risk. And we believe the benefit of it and the reason why cost control on the CMAR jobs, and again, these are big, these are north of the plane train job in Atlanta was just 800 million, I think. The design progresses under the direction of the owner, and the engineering is controlled by that owner group. And the builder is brought on before the design is finished. So the procurement periods overlap. You could save a year or 2 in procurement. But the decision on what's in and what's out and where the price is going and the allocation of risks, those are made with the 2 parties, the owners, experts, and engineers on one side and the contractors on the other, meeting in the middle. And what we're seeing in progressive, it's owner alone and the 2 over here on the side, and the jobs are breaking on cost. So I don't know, that again, I have to say that that's Dan Adams speaking, the industry guy on delivering big design build jobs. big alternative delivery jobs. And we're just not seeing progressive be effective, or we're not seeing owners getting what they want on the other side of those.
Dan, I'll jump in real quick here, Director Anabtawi too. We are analyzing this in detail. As you know, we have been working on a pretty detailed schedule. You know, the key, I think what, not to speak for Dan or the panel, but I think what they digested through their period with us is there are a lot of constraints. There are a lot of very specific requirements, a lot of permit requirements and other issues. And, you know, creating a flexible space for design innovation and working requires a lot of knowledge of those constraints and kind of working within them. And I think it does in some ways undercut some of the potential benefits that you often hear theoretically occurring. And so we're analyzing that in detail. And so it's not a, you know, I really appreciate the panel's input and I think it makes a lot of sense, but it's something that we are going to continue to analyze. We're not to the point yet where we need to make decisions on this, but it's something that we're keenly aware of and are evaluating in detail.
Well, I really appreciate that first candid opinion on that, and through your experience, and as well as kind of the DCA being open to explore. Is there friction involved in us being able to use something like CM at risk? I mean, is there still steps ahead of us here to enable that as an option, should that pan out?
Well, I think first for us, we're going to evaluate and understand the benefits potentially to the program. There are some other steps that we also are working through, but first, I think we want to really understand what we think the benefit to the program, to this specific program is before we continue pushing those other steps.
Graham, thanks for getting me out of that question.
Yep, you're sure thing, Dan. Hang on, there's another comment for you. Director Weed, your mic just didn't trigger. One second, Dan, hang on.
Yeah.
All right, I'm live. Thank you. First of all, thank you for the work that was presented to us today. In terminology for design procedures and the contractual methodology, it strikes me that an element of cost, confidence, and predictability becomes an important element here. And those terms were not used in the presentation, but it strikes me that that is a major issue to us as we go forward, that we have that we as a group can make a good faith presentation to the legislature and the public that we're going to be able to accomplish the job within a cost frame. Schedule does not seem in my mind to be as critical because this is a water project. Goes out over a long period of time. So to that extent, I encourage you to look at it, the flexibility to the contractor to be able to use methodologies within that they're comfortable with. I note this, there are not many really big projects like this and the limited number of contractors that are able to do it. And each comes with their own set of skills and experience. So it's difficult to come up with a strict framework of what they have to work in. So the more flexibility we can give the contractor to work within their level, the better we are. So, thank you.
Any other questions? I would echo the other director's comments. It was a great analysis. I'll be reading it on my own time, and maybe we'll have another time we can ask more detailed questions. Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you, President Milbar.
I'd like to thank Dan for joining us and the ITR. It was a very impressive group, and the fact that they can digest as much information as they do and did in a short amount of time and wrap their head around it, although they haven't been living with it for years like many of us, is incredibly impressive. So thank you, Dan, for joining us, and thank you for the work.
Our pleasure, and it's a pleasure always mine to help the industry along. So anytime.
There any public comments on this one, Ms. Rodriguez?
President Milbar, we did not have any public comment requests.
7D, Senior Leadership Spotlight of Rebekah Green. Can you
Yep.
introduce Rebekah?
I will, President Millibar, happy to. We have joining us today Rebekah Green. Rebekah is our newly onboarded property acquisition lead for the program. Rebekah works for Bender Rosenthal, who is a small business right-of-way company that we've been working with for several years now. I think we've talked about the quality of the work provided by Bender Rosenthal. Rob Aller, who is our field coordinator, dealing with all issues in the field, also works for the same firm and has been consulting with Rebekah for years now, but we're really happy to have brought Rebekah on board and look forward to her presentation.
Graham. Good afternoon. As Graham said, my name is Rebekah Green. A little bit about me is I'm born and raised here in Sacramento. I'm 5th generation Sacramento. I'm married to a U.S. Army sergeant. He's served for the military the last 17 years. Little things about me outside of work is I like to cook and bake, and I like to work out a lot. So I've done a century, marathon, and a lot of half marathons. And I do have 16 nieces and nephews, and I'm going to be a great aunt pretty soon. And I went to Sac State and I have a degree in social work. Next slide, please. So as Graham said, I am employed at Bender Rosenthal. I am a project manager and an escrow expert. My territory of clients ranges from Bakersfield to up to the Oregon border that I serve. Prior to joining Bender Rosenthal, I worked at 1031 Real Estate Services, which was a tax-deferred real estate intermediary for a nationwide company. And in my free time, I was a social worker part-time. I have a long history working with the Department of Water Resources, DWR. I've worked with them for the last 14 years, and my firm has worked with them for the last over 25 years. I work a lot with Al Davis and the staff over there. And in general, I also work on a lot of water projects throughout the state of California. Next slide. Bender Rosenthal has currently completed over 135 task orders. And I've also worked on 6 major flood control projects with DWR. I helped implement DWR's policy for real estate, including final counting packages and overseeing with the Army Corps of Engineers. Some other projects I've worked on is the Three Rivers and Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency, which was up north. I did a lot of their levee work. I also completed the West Sacramento project across the way, and I'm now currently assisting on the San Joaquin Area Flood Control Agency in the Delta, improving all their levees out there for them. And next slide, please. My role here for DCA is to help implement the real estate and right-of-way needs for the project, coordinate with all the team leads, and also work with and partners with DWR and the executive director here. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Questions of Mrs. Green? Well, I'm glad you're helping us. You're in a difficult environment with the opposition in the Delta, but it looks like you'll be able to handle it quite well. And so welcome, and look forward to seeing you getting all the lands that we need.
You're welcome. It'll be good. It's a good project.
Public comments?
President Milbar, we do not have any.
Yeah, President Milbar. Rebekah, welcome to the project, and maybe a question for you. So which one's harder, the century or marathon?
The marathon.
Yeah, so I take it that, it'll serve you well because you're in it for the long run. Hopefully.
Yes, thank you.
Robert said what I was gonna say. So your marathon background will fit right in.
So President
Not
Millibar,
running away from them or towards them.
I'll offer President Millibar, we're really happy to have Rebekah join us and, really right now it's all about planning, preparing for the future. And so it's a great opportunity to bring on the quality individuals like Rebekah onto the program to start thinking about how the land acquisition is going to be conducted properly in compliance with state requirements, Department of Water Resources requirements. You can imagine, as many of you have commented already, it's going to be quite a process. And so we're of course, not implementing anything at this point, but this is the planning phase where we're getting ready for that future stage. And we want to be ready for that. We don't want to sort of turn around and start asking ourselves, how do we do this at the right time? So, or in those future times. So we're getting into it now and look forward to Rebekah's participation going forward.
Good, thank you, Rebekah.
President Milbar, if I could just say as well, real briefly, no, I just welcome aboard. I mean this in the best way possible. I can't wait for you to be extremely busy in this program and to see really some major strides for this project that the state clearly needs as needed. So welcome aboard. Thank you for the work you do.
Move on to item 8, reports. At this time, we'll take all public comment on staff reports and announcements. If you would like to provide public comment on any reports, please let us know. Ms. Rodriguez, any public comments yet? No?
President Millibar, we have not received any public comment requests for any of the items on the agenda to this moment.
Item A, our first report is General Counsel, Josh.
Thanks, President Millibar. My written report's in the packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions of Josh? No questions at this time. All right. Next is the Treasurer's Report, Catano.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you. So this report, we usually about 2 months behind since we don't always report every month. But the last time we reported this, we had July 1, 2024, the cash. So as you know, as we continue to just manage the small cash that we have a deposit of dollars that we requested, about $800K, to manage items that we can't wait for money to come from the DCO to pay the bills. So I just always want to remind, just in case there are new people. So what we really manage is just the payments coming in and out and just retaining that small amount. So during July, we had $752,864 at the end of the month and received various payments and invoices. After all the payments were done, at the end of September, we were left with $807,854. And so that small cash is what we manage, really hold and invest until such time that we actually have a project. So my job and my team's job is to continue to pay bills, make sure that we are aligned with Graham's shop, and make sure we're recording our statements and do the financials. And so this activity report really just gives you that monthly, even though this is a little dated, 2 months behind, it gives you that information so you'll see where we are with our receivables, with our in and out cash. And so we have attached all the financial statements behind this for the last 3 months, ended September 30, 2024 for your review. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. And I think my controller is also online. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions of Catano? No questions. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Moving on to communications, Janet.
Yeah, we have Janet Barbieri with us today, who is the communications manager for the Department of Water Resources. Valerie Martinez is not able to join us today as our DCA comms manager, but happy to have Janet come in. Thanks, Janet.
Having me. Just a couple of very brief things I wanted to update you on. One is that your comms team is continuing to do various materials and activities. One is there's a new fact sheet up on the DCA's website, and that's on engineering innovations. And of course, that's translated. It's in both Spanish and Chinese. So that is up and available now. They're continuing to do their social media work with really excellent numbers on that. So they continue to put information out into the sort of the social media sphere. And then the last thing I wanted to mention about their work right now is that they are also continuing to look for opportunities to do exhibits. And so, at different conferences around the state, there's have a really excellent exhibit set up. And in fact, they're at one today at the League of California Cities. So it's just a really good opportunity to sort of interact with people. On the DWR side of things, just a couple things I wanted to mention. One, you might have seen that we put out recently our community benefits program. So it's sort of the next click on that. It's the draft implementation plan and guidelines. And so that is now available for public review. It's a long open process. We probably will have that open through about March 1st of next year. We didn't want to rush people, especially, toward the end of the year and holidays and that kind of thing. So we just, we're doing quite a bit of outreach on that to make sure that people are aware and, they know that it's out there. They know that there's an opportunity review. And we do have a feedback form. It's a Google form, sort of walks people through that document, asks some questions. So we're really hoping to get some engagement on that. I also wanted to mention that, just a reminder, everyone here should be on our mailing list, our e-blast mailing list. But if not, definitely get signed up for that. And I encourage the public to do that as well. But we have been doing kind of weekly refresher blogs. We have a lot of really good information about the project, a lot of different vehicles, so written materials and video materials and other things. And so we're putting those blogs out on a weekly basis now, just to kind of recirculate some of that information that we have available. And then the last thing I'll mention is that we are also continuing to do briefings. And so the team is available, for any organizations that are looking for an update on the project. Folks are available for that. So that's it for me. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Janet? Thank you for your work. It's very important, communication, and keep it up. We'll keep going. The last report is for the directors. Any verbal reports? I know Graham has one.
I appreciate that. Yes, I do, President Millibar. I just want to call attention to alternate director Barbara Keegan. She is, as I understand it, Barbara, not pursuing a next term on her home board at Valley Water and will be stepping down from this board as an alternate. So I just wanted to take a moment and just really acknowledge all that we have gained by having Barbara involved, and really appreciate Director Keegan's input through the Stakeholder Engagement Committee process. She was a co-chair to that process, and really just what an incredible opportunity to solicit input, discuss the project with the community, and Barbara's input on that process was really invaluable. So I do just want to acknowledge that, and also if it's okay with you, President Millibar, we'd like to have a resolution in the December board meeting to officially acknowledge alternate director Keegan's contributions.
That would be a very good idea. And on behalf of the board, we appreciate all the time she put into that stakeholder process. That was very long, and it was quite a bit of work, and it was very, very successful, I think. So thanks to her, and we'll pass that resolution at our next board meeting. Are there any future agenda items that anyone? Who did? Is that
So,
Director Keegan?
President Millibar, we do have a raised hand here, and that would be alternate director Palmer.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to say something. I know I'm alternate director, but having worked with Barbara on the Stakeholder Engagement Committee, I wanted to commend her. She was terrific to work with. She did a lot of work with that. And yeah, Barbara, I applaud you. You were fabulous to work with, and I'm sorry you won't continue. That's it.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. It was really a pleasure to participate in this process and the Stakeholder Engagement Committee. And I feel like this was maybe a once in a lifetime kind of experience to work with such a great team on such a huge project. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this move forward and have something in place that is really going to benefit California for generations to come. So thank you very much.
Very much for your participation. And we'll be talking to you in the future. Okay, any other, you want to make a comment?
Yes, sir. Well, I guess first is congratulations to Director Keegan for, her contributions and, good luck and well wishes and, the future. But I did want to also acknowledge, I think Graham and his team for helping CVWD's board get to a successful resolution on the next tranche of funding. I think he and Kerry Buckman were nice enough to come all the way down to the desert, although I don't think you really, experienced the heat of the summer. We spared you that. It's only like 110 degrees that day, I think, when you came down. But so anyways, I thought it was a very good dialogue between you, Kerry, and myself with the board. And so I just want to extend my appreciation for all the work that you do.
Good. Any other discussion? No comments? Okay.
President Millibar, I did want to just take a moment and acknowledge that we have alternate directors also participating in today's meeting. In the room, we do have alternate director Plinsky, and online, of course, Miss Sarah Palmer and alternate director Dan Fleury.
Good. Thank you for participating. If there's no other business, we can adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.